Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling. Welcome to another video covering another one of my favorite kaiju and giving them some rules for Warhammer 40k. And of course, this time is one of Godzilla's most unique opponents in Biollante. Now, if you aren't familiar with Biollante, she is a plant-based kaiju. The reason she is called a she is because in her debut, Dr. Shiragami was a world-renowned bioengineer. And when Godzilla attacked Japan in 1984, he was contracted to work with G cells, but every world superpower wanted these G cells, so there was espionage at play, and his daughter was unfortunately killed in one of these attacks. In a last-ditch effort to save his daughter, he spliced her DNA with that of a rose, and swore off working with Godzilla cells ever working again. From there, he would spend the next 5 years trying to communicate with his daughter through various means, eventually coming to the understanding that only psychic communication would work. But unfortunately, before he could make any connection, there was an earthquake that nearly destroyed his lab. And that, when it nearly destroyed his lab, knocked over the container his rose was in, which was going to kill the rose, and with no other options but to save it, Dr. Shiragami spliced in Godzilla's cells with the rose, which also had his daughter's cells in it. And over the next few days, she would mutate to great size, becoming her rose beast form in the lake that they lived next to. And after a face-off with Godzilla, she would return in her plant beast form later. So in terms of abilities, Biollante is certainly one of Godzilla's strangest and most unique opponents. In terms of durability, I'd say she's actually a little below average, whether that's because she's made of a plant or just in general she's not quite as tough as some of these other opponents. But this is offset because she seems to be able to regenerate pretty much any damage at a rapid rate, as well as the fact that she is functionally immortal. Anytime she takes too much damage, she can split into golden spores that will float away and can eventually reform elsewhere. And this is what she did at the end of her fight with Godzilla, both times actually, which means she is one of Godzilla's few enemies that he just didn't outright kill. In terms of offense, her rose form itself, as we can see here on the right, is completely immobile and can't really fight for itself. But she makes up with this by being able to grow seemingly an endless amount of tendrils. These tendrils were weak on their own, but strong enough as a group to effectively tie down Godzilla and keep him trapped. They also had mouths at the end of their tendrils to spray acidic sap into Godzilla's face, onto him in general, and to be used as an offensive weapon. This acidic sap became stronger once she transformed and she could fire it from her maw. And it was strong enough to hurt Godzilla and blind him temporarily. She also can make spear-tipped tendrils that are strong enough to pierce through Godzilla, as it pierced through his hand with no issue in her plant beast form. And again, as I mentioned before, in terms of abilities, her main one is her ability to summon almost as many tendrils as she needs, and these can be used as weapons, for grasping things, and for shielding, actually, as she used a wall of them to block Godzilla's atomic breath to a reasonable, effect. Let's get on to the datasheets. So we're going to start with her weakest form. This is her Rose Beast form, which is going to be one of the weaker kaiju we've seen, and for that I've knocked down her points to 2,500 instead of 3,000. She has movement 0. She cannot move under any circumstances, as Rose Beast form can't move. She's toughness 16, so a good bit softer than other titans. Other kaiju. She has a 2+ save, which is just the standard for kaiju. 110 wounds, which puts her much below the durability of the others. The same leadership 5+ and OC 25. In terms of ranged weapons, she is equipped with Tendril Acidic Sap, which is 46 + 4, Torrent, Ignore Cover, Strength 14, AP 4, Damage 5, so really good at killing infantry and pretty much good at damaging anything that isn't an opposing kaiju, really. And she has her mouth tendrils and melee, which are 15 attacks, hitting on 2, Strength 14, AP 4, and Damage 3. So in a one-on-one fight, she would certainly lose to any other kaiju. Even like Destoroyah's smaller forms would mulch her effectively. And before we get on to her abilities, she has an extra set of them called Immortal Plant. One of them is firmly rooted. She cannot move, and in deployment, if you need to, you can remove as much terrain as you need to place her, and then just place her down there. And then her second ability is Nightmarish Evolution. When this model is destroyed at the start of the next battle round, place one Biollante plant beast form in your deployment zone. This is to show that when she was damaged severely by Godzilla, she simply broke apart and reformed into a much stronger form. So, in terms of her abilities, her first one is Immortal Regeneration. At the start of your command phase, if this model is below starting strength, roll 3d6 and add that many wounds back to this model to a maximum of 110 wounds. So she can't go over, but she will be regenerating quite a few wounds every turn. Then we have Swarming Tendrils. In your command phase, place a unit of Biollante tendrils within 15 inches of this model, which is a datasheet we'll get into later. And then her final ability is the Ensnaring Vines, so you can select one enemy unit within 18 inches of this model, roll a d6, on a 2+, that unit cannot move in the next movement phase, on a 1, that unit's movement, advance, and charge rolls are all halved. In terms of keywords, very standard: Monster, Titanic, Biollante, Rose Beast form, Towering, and she's part of the Kaiju faction. And she has a 5+ invulnerable save, just to make her a little, like, she doesn't get completely destroyed, because she can take a bit of a beating. She's still a Kaiju, you know. Then we're on to her Plant Beast form, which comes in at 3,000 points, but if you bring Rose form, you obviously get it for cheaper. This gal can move 8 inches, she's toughness 18, save 2+, 150 wounds, a 5+ leadership, and OC 25. Now, she is bigger than Godzilla in terms of bulk, but given her lower overall durability, I've decided she didn't need, say, 170 wounds like Destoroyah. And surprisingly enough, you can't see it here, but her 4 main tendrils do function as legs. She can move, and the way she moves, she starts very slow, but she picks up a lot of momentum as she goes on, which we'll get into in her abilities. Now, her ranged weapon has been upgraded to the Maw Acidic Sap, which is Torrent, Ignore Cover, 24-inch range, 5d6 plus 4 attacks, obviously ballistic skill not applicable, strength 18, AP 4, and damage 5. So on the weaker end of Kaiju ranged attacks, but still extremely effective at melting people, tanks, heavy infantry, light infantry, and it likely will do some damage to opposing Kaiju. And then in melee, we'll start with her extra attacks, which are the mouth tendrils she has. That's 12 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 4, AP 4, damage 3. So again, just a flurry of extra attacks to kill space marines, lighter vehicles, and we really good at killing Terminators, actually. And then we have her Maw, which was big enough to basically nearly like bite down and swallow Godzilla. Her snout is really long. She's got her big chompers. And for this, I gave her 8 attacks, hitting on 2s at strength 25, AP 4, damage 10. So basically, whatever gets in her jaws is going to be crushed immediately. Excluding, like, she might struggle to swallow a Bane Blade in one attack, but almost anything that she gets her jaws on will die. Excluding, again, opposing Kaiju. Now, she has the same regeneration, but just instead of maxing out at 110, 150. Swarming Tendrils, same as before. Ensnaring Vines, same as before. Now, her new rule is Immense Momentum. When this model advances or charges, you're going to add 4 to the result. Now, this is because, I'd say in Biollante's most famous scene, it's her charging at Godzilla. And she does, again, start slow, but pick up speed as she keeps moving. It's a really cool scene. In general, this movie, this is a little side tangent, has some of the most effective piano wire puppetry in the entire franchise and the entire genre of practical effect monster movies. As this girl came out in 1989 and is done in completely practical. Oh, and one last side note. Never mind. Here we have the Biollante Tendrils, which is what both of them can summon, one squad of every turn. It's 1,000 points for 4 of them, as you can see here. I wanted to take the Tau drones approach, where they're so expensive, there's really no reason to buy them on their own, but you get to summon them from Biollante. These guys are all movement 10 inches, sorry. Toughness 12, 2+ save, 30 wounds apiece, 6+ leadership, and OC 5. They have the same Ensnaring Vines rule, but instead it's on a 4+, and then on a 1 to 3, the units' advance and charge rolls are all halved. In terms of weapons, you have the Acid Maw, which is... let me explain. So when you deploy these, you deploy them with either the Acid Maws or the Spear tips. Spear tips, you get better melee but lose your weapon. The mod Acid Maws gives you the Acid Maw ranged weapon, but significantly weaker melee. In terms of the Acid mod, it has Torrent, of course, because it's legitimately spraying acid. At 2d6 plus 3 attacks, Ballistic Skill not applicable, Strength 12, AP 3, Damage 4. So, generally ineffective against kaiju and heavy targets, but it's very effective, and given Biollante's immobileness in her base form and her overall slow movement, I wanted to give her some extra abilities, and also this is sort of going to be her unique thing, is spawning in powerful opponents. Now, in an upcoming video, I think I'm going to do Legion from Gamera, so he might be stealing some of the flow of this, but that's fine. And also, you may notice that Biollante didn't have the towering rule to blast through buildings. I'm going to make a kaiju detachment and just make that the universal part of the universal rule. Regardless, one of the melee weapons. Tightened Grasp is what you get with the Acid Maw, so they're just constricting people. That's 6 attacks, they're hitting on 3, Strength 8, AP 0, Damage 2. Which means they're pretty much just good at crushing infantry. But then you also have the option of the Spear tips, which these are the things that pierce through Godzilla, so I really wanted to make them effective. There's 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, Strength 19, AP 5, and Damage 5. So a squad of these is going to be able to skewer almost anything, and they'll be moderately effective against opposing kaiju, which was my goal. And that's all for them, and in fact, that's all we've got for Biollante and her sub-units, as I call them. I've been Spoons Rattling, and I'll see you all next time.